Jasmine Mitchell had balanced champagne flutes for a dozen galas, but nothing could have prepared her for this moment. She froze mid-step, her tray trembling in her hands as she stared at the photograph. It hung in a gold leaf frame in the restricted west wing of the Blackwell mansion, an image of a curly-haired girl, no older than 4, smiling shyly in a pink cotton dress. Her pinky finger pointed at the edge of a wooden swing, mid-laugh. Jasmine's knees nearly buckled. "That's me!" The words whispered through her lips before she could catch them. Her breath caught in her throat as panic swelled beneath her ribs. She had no memory of being in this mansion, no memory of ever being held by someone named Richard Blackwell. And yet, here she was, immortalized in a frame among oil paintings and rare art pieces, like a relic. She spun around at the sound of heavy footsteps. "Hey, this area is restricted," barked a security guard. "Sorry," she lied smoothly, fighting the tremor in her voice. "I got lost looking for the restroom." He glared at her, but motioned toward the corridor. She obeyed. Still trembling, she turned back for one last look, just enough time to memorize every detail of the image that had shattered her sense of reality. Back in the grand ballroom, Richard Blackwell was playing benevolent royalty, laughing at stockbroker jokes and making speeches about his charitable foundation for orphans. The crowd ate it up like gourmet dessert. Jasmine stood against the wall, numb, her thoughts spiraling. The man who had walked past her without a glance, who lived in opulence, whose shoes alone probably cost more than she made in a month, had her picture on his wall. Why? She had grown up in a whirlwind of foster homes and disjointed records. The system had explained her abandonment with vague references to a fire, lost files, and difficult family history. But nothing could explain this. Her gaze pierced through Richard's carefully controlled smiles. Something behind his eyes twitched. Regret? Guilt? Or a performance honed to perfection? Then he said it. "Losing a child changes a man forever. That pain, it gives purpose." The crowd nodded, applauded, cried. Jasmine's stomach turned. "You didn't lose me, you threw me away." That night, sleep was impossible. The photo haunted her, taunting her with questions she had no answers for. She needed help. She knew exactly who to ask. The next evening, Jasmine met Marcus, the veteran bartender who had worked every elite event in Chicago for 2 decades. If there were skeletons buried under the marble, Marcus had poured drinks over them. "Blackwell," he repeated, almost choking on his coffee. "You don't want to mess with that man, Jazz. His name opens doors and locks vaults. What's this about?" "I just heard something about his past." Marcus leaned closer, voice low. He had a wife, Helena, smart, a firecracker, activist, died in an accident 20 years ago. They had a little girl. Jasmine's fingers dug into her palm. "The weird part," Marcus continued, "after the wife died, the girl was never seen again. Rumor was Richard used the wife's insurance payout to build his foundation." Jasmine's blood ran cold. "And the girl," she whispered, "vanished. No funeral, no body, no press, just gone." The puzzle pieces had started to form a grotesque picture. Jasmine spent the next days digging, using fake accounts and stolen Wi-Fi from the cafe where she waitressed mornings. Richard Blackwell had remarried 3 times. Each wife was younger, silenced by ironclad prenups, each marriage mysteriously short. Helena Blackwell, her mother, had been investigating private adoption agencies just 2 weeks before her accident. The deeper Jasmine dug, the darker the truth became. She turned to Margaret Santos, a retired private investigator who nursed cappuccinos at the cafe every morning at 9:15 sharp. "I need a favor," Jasmine said. Margaret raised an eyebrow. "This the kind of favor that gets old ladies arrested?" "It's the kind that gets a monster exposed." Margaret leaned back, studied her. "Tell me everything." By the end of the story, her old hands were trembling, not from age, but fury. "Sweetheart," she said softly, "you're not just searching for your father. You're hunting a killer." 6 weeks later, Jasmine had everything. Fake death certificates, insurance payouts, tax fraud, recorded confessions, even a grainy photo of her mother in a hospital bed whispering her final words, "Protect the girl from him." And now it was time. The annual Blackwell Foundation Gala for Orphan Children was the perfect stage, decorated with hypocrisy and golden lies. Jasmine dressed in uniform, tray in hand, rage in heart. Richard ascended the stage under chandeliers and applause. "As a man who lost his daughter, I understand the pain of abandonment." Jasmine stepped onto the stage and took the mic. "Excuse me, Mr. Blackwell," she said, her voice slicing through the ballroom. "Can I ask you about your daughter?" The crowd gasped. Richard turned pale. "Miss, this is highly inappropriate." "I think it's very appropriate," Jasmine said, pulling a photo from her purse. "This was hanging in your private hallway. Care to explain?" Then she dropped the bomb. "I am that daughter." Gasps erupted like fireworks. Phones lifted. Cameras flashed. "You declared me dead. You killed my mother to claim her inheritance. Then you faked my death to collect mine." Richard lunged for the mic. Jasmine pulled back. "Oh no, you'll want to hear this." She dropped a folder of documents on the podium, each a nail in his coffin. Her death certificate, forged. The insurance payout, signed. Her mother's autopsy, poisoned 2 hours after the crash. Secret recordings, Richard confessing to his lawyer that removing Helena and the child was a necessary sacrifice. "Ladies and gentlemen," Jasmine said, voice calm, "meet the real Richard Blackwell, fraud, murderer, monster." Margaret nodded from the crowd. The FBI was already at the back entrance. Richard Blackwell, Philanthropist of the Year, was led away in handcuffs, while Jasmine looked him in the eyes one final time. "You tried to erase me," she whispered, "but I've written a new story." Richard Blackwell was no longer the untouchable king of Chicago's philanthropic elite. In the days following Jasmine's dramatic revelation, every news outlet carried the same story: the dead daughter who came back to expose her billionaire father. The video of her speech at the gala racked up 30 million views in a week. Hashtags trended worldwide. Foundations revoked their partnerships. 3 universities stripped Richard of honorary titles. His face disappeared from press releases, replaced by hers. Worse than public humiliation, though, was the avalanche of legal consequences. The FBI uncovered forged death certificates, insurance fraud, hidden offshore accounts, and money funneled from the foundation meant to help orphans into private jets, art auctions, and real estate. Within weeks, 47 other people across 12 states were arrested in connection to illegal adoption rings, some dating back 20 years, all linked by a name: Helena Blackwell. Jasmine's mother had been on the brink of exposing something massive before her murder, and now, through her daughter, she had succeeded. Richard tried to spin his downfall. From prison, he wrote letters begging for forgiveness. "I was young, scared. I made mistakes. If you really are my daughter, I want a second chance." Jasmine read the first line, then tore the letter in half. She had no interest in comforting a man who had stolen her childhood and silenced her mother. "Forgiveness is a gift for the innocent," she told a reporter. "Richard Blackwell isn't guilty of a single mistake. He built an entire life on murder and deception." He was sentenced to 25 years, no parole. His cell, Jasmine later learned, had no windows. 6 months after Richard's arrest, Jasmine stood behind a polished oak desk beneath a new nameplate. Helena Blackwell Foundation, Executive Director, Jasmine Mitchell. What had once been a hollow PR machine for a fraud now became a living tribute to justice. The stolen millions were frozen, recovered, and redirected. 5 new orphanages were built. Over 200 children received access to quality education. Dozens of families were reunited. The mission Helena had died for was finally alive. Jasmine didn't do it alone. Margaret became her chief investigator. Marcus, the old bartender, was now the foundation's event coordinator. But the biggest surprise had come from a DNA test and a phone call. "I've been looking for you for years," said a woman's voice. Sarah, Helena's sister, Jasmine's aunt. Their reunion was quiet, tearful, sacred. "You have her eyes," Sarah said, "and her fire." Together, they published Helena's journals and launched a national campaign to reform adoption laws. Helena's name was no longer associated with a car crash. It was now etched into every courthouse policy reform, every scholarship fund, every billboard about children's rights. Jasmine had gone from ghost to guardian. Her story appeared on the cover of Time magazine. The dead daughter who brought down a giant and built a legacy of truth. Each month, hundreds of letters poured in, from children, mothers, fathers, all touched by the new foundation. One letter stood out. "Jasmine, I was adopted thanks to your program. My mom says you're a hero. I think you're an angel." Jasmine wept reading that letter, then walked alone to her mother's grave. She laid white roses gently beneath the new headstone. Helena Blackwell, mother, activist, heroine. She fought for those with no voice. Her daughter made sure she was heard. Jasmine knelt and whispered, "We did it, Mom. He buried me to silence you, but we became louder than his empire ever was." As the wind brushed past her cheeks, she felt no rage, only purpose. The kind of purpose no mansion could buy and no lie could erase.